So you've heard a lot of detail this morning about this budget that's coming up. But there are 2 points that I want to make sure that anybody listening to this presentation leaves here with. One is that this budget is not fully baked, and yet it's already presenting us with teacher cuts, increased class sizes, and still a budget gap of $850,000. We've got a fire to put out, and we need to decide to do something very soon to try to improve the conditions here. We are offering the families and the students who use our school system decreased service over the next year. And that isn't a goal that any town should have. I think if we look at our position as leaders of this community and making sure that the government works well, that there's one very simple way for us to think about how we're doing. One is that it's reasonable for people to expect that from year to year, services will at least be as good as the services they are experiencing now. They're not going to go down. And yet what we're presenting is going down, and still there's a gap. Big problem, and we need to be able to fix that. The second point is that this budget contains a lot of areas that are not surprises. So if we look at our Chapter 70 funding, no surprise there, and we can predict that into the future. If we look at the aid from outside sources, no surprises there. If we look at the other financial sources, if we look at our costs, no big surprises there. There are a few volatilities, but probably 95+% of our budget can be predicted into the future quite well. And so I think after we address the fire that's before us, we should add a function to the way we function as a government and think in terms of consciously planning for the future, building a buttress so we're not living paycheck to paycheck as a department, and looking at how we can try to predict what is going to happen and prevent this sort of situation from happening again. We're putting out a fire, and we've put out this fire before, and it is within our capacity to prevent this from happening in the future. We have the ability to look at the numbers, to project things, and to go. And this one slide that I have looks at the change in the total town's budget from year to year, back to the early 80s. And you can see that as we experience it year to year, it goes up, it goes down, and people will say, how can you predict anything there? And yet, if you were to put in a trend line, what you can see there are 2 things. One is there is a trend, and it is possible to predict this. And the other is that this trend these days, the reason now is different than 1995 or 2000, is that we're trickling down to below 4% for a stable increase in the amount of money. And we know that we're running a business that goes up by about 4% a year. So as we go forward, we can expect this sort of crisis to occur more often unless we address things in an active way that allows us to say, here's what we expect over the next few years. We need to build some buffers into this system. We need to have what amounts for a family to a nice emergency fund or savings account so that we can assure that we are providing the best services and that we can function like the quality district we are and be able to have resources to spend on research and development, to be able to have resources to advance with the technology and offer a better service, not just keep the doors open. So those are my 2 big points.